Tiruchidrambalam. Different types of Shaivites temples.
Imagine carving a mountain into pieces by hand. To build their grand stone temples, ancient Tamil dynasties relied on thousands of artisans chiseling massive granite blocks day after day, using nothing but iron tools and sheer force. But you couldn't just stack these stones however you wanted. Every measurement, shape, and angle had to strictly follow the Shiva Agama, ancient texts detailing the precise science of temple construction. The Agamas function as rigid spiritual laws, demanding that daily rituals continue without a single day's interruption, regardless of the scale of construction. The kings commissioning these projects wanted to leave behind an indestructible physical legacy, a monument of solid granite that would outlast their own empires. This creates a massive problem. Building a towering monument takes decades of intense labor, but the Agamas demand that devotion cannot pause for a single day. To understand the logistical nightmare this creates, look at this schematic. On the left, a stone kutrali covered in scaffolding. On the right, worshippers stand before an empty pedestal. How do they coexist? You can't have people praying under swinging stone blocks. An active construction site is physically dangerous and ritually impure for daily public worship. So how do you bridge the gap? How do you build an eternal legacy without neglecting your daily spiritual duty? It is exactly like trying to keep a major hospital or infrastructure hub 100% operational while you completely rebuild the structure around it. So ancient architects needed a strategic bypass. They had to engineer a specific operational mechanism to separate the massive construction zone from the quiet, required daily devotion. This image shows our first historical approach to permanence, the Kudavarai, or rock-cut temple, favored by Pallava and Pandya kings. You can see how the structure was generated by carving downward and inward directly into an existing mountain, removing the negative space. Because the Kudavarai is literally part of the earth, it possesses absolute immunity to natural decay. It doesn't fall down because it was never built up. This structure shows the evolutionary leap, the Katrali. This is a fully structural stone temple built from the ground up. Notice the towering, multi-tiered pyramidal vimana. This staggering scale is only possible by stacking interlocking granite blocks without mortar. But the input required for a Katrali is astronomical. It demands quarrying, transporting, and precisely carving thousands of granite blocks, often spanning multiple generations of rulers. This legacy path guarantees an eternal physical monument, but it maximizes the downtime problem. The main sanctum becomes a dangerous construction zone, completely unusable for decades. Early worshippers had a very different organic approach, the Gnajal and Kokudi temples. Instead of clearing the land, they built temples directly around living sacred flora. They adapted the architecture to the environment, resulting in stone deities deeply entwined with living Kokudi vines. We know from historical records that the famous Tirunelveli Nelliyapar temple originally started exactly like this, sheltered under a living Gnajal tree. While this creates immediate ritual integration with nature, it has a severe limitation. The architectural layout is entirely restricted by the organic growth of the plant life. It is ecologically harmonious, but this natural path simply could not scale to fulfill the massive, monumental ambitions of later imperial dynasties. To get the monumental scale without violating the rules of daily worship, they devised an agile workaround, the Ilangoyal, known today as Balayayam. Think of the Ilangoyil as a smaller, parallel structure built rapidly from temporary materials like wood and brick. It safely houses the deity away from the act of construction. This guarantees 100% continuous daily ritual, keeping devotees entirely safe. The core premise of the Ilangoyil is utility. It lacks monumental scale and is strictly intended to be dismantled the moment the main temple is completed. When forced to choose, ancient engineers prioritized the continuity of the software, the daily ritual, over the immediate permanence of the hardware. Tamil temple architecture didn't stop at massive scale. It evolved into highly complex thematic designs, bringing us to structures like the Karakoil. This close-up shows the base of a Karakoil, a specialized temple built to identically mimic a massive festival chariot. You can clearly see the intricate stone carving of the spoked wheel and the straining horse. As artisans achieved this level of aesthetic mastery, they began applying the exact same extraordinary artistic skill to the temporary Ilonggoyal shrines as well. This created an entirely new dilemma for the kings. What do you do when your temporary logistical workaround turns out too beautiful to destroy? Intense artistic devotion eventually blurred the lines between a temporary utility and a permanent masterpiece. This leads to the ultimate historical synthesis, the permanent Ilonggoyal. At Theater Miniature, the king was so captivated by the temporary shrine he refused to dismantle it. This created an ongoing trade-off. Modern custodians must now maintain two distinct permanent shrines side by side within a single complex. So, what does this mean for modern custodians? If your goal is an enduring, millennia-spanning legacy, the pure granite Kutrali remains the undisputed gold standard. Conversely, if a community faces urgent repairs, limited initial resources, or rigid agamic constraints, the Balayaya method provides the necessary operational agility. Ancient Tamil architects synchronized two different scales of time, the immediate rhythm of daily devotion and the slow rise of a stone monument toward eternity. Long before the rise of the great stone towers, Tamil worship was an intimate, outdoor experience, often centered around natural canopies like massive banyan trees or simple structures of mud and timber. As the civilization's wealth grew, these temporary shrines were replaced by the Katrali, temples constructed entirely of stone to ensure their presence lasted for eternity. This shift to granite forced builders to rethink the very nature of sacred space. They had to figure out how a heavy, rigid material could be shaped to hold both the quiet, poetic devotion of a village and the massive, intimidating scale of an empire. The response was a branching of architectural styles. Instead of one standard model, builders developed highly specialized categories, each engineered to fulfill a specific role in Tamil society. These specialized designs meant that even the earliest stone temples were not just passive buildings, but active technologies designed to communicate specific messages of power and faith. One of the earliest of these specialized blueprints was the Mani coil. The defining element here is the Vimana, the tower sitting directly above the inner sanctum where the deity resides. Unlike the more common square or stepped towers, a Mani coil requires this specific geometric profile. The Vimana must be shaped into a smooth, bell-like cone known as a mani. This bell-shaped geometry was a direct physical manifestation of ancient Tamil literary traditions, where the bell represented the clarity and resonance of the divine word. This connection is explicitly cited in the Devarim hymns, which point to the Peruvalur Mani coil near Mayiladuthurai as the primary example of this specific architectural ideal. In these structures, the abstract mathematics of the circle and the cone were fused with the imagery of the hymns, turning the temple into a localized, intimate monument. A different set of requirements led to the Paran coil, or Mata coil, a category defined by a shift from intimate geometry toward massive, uncompromising scale. This style is historically linked to the early Chola king Kochenganan, a ruler who initiated a transition toward more monumental religious footprints. During his reign, architecture began to reflect the Vishwarupam, the concept of the deity in a massive, all-encompassing form, as vast as the empire itself. The defining feature of the Paran coil is the Adisthanam, a foundational platform that lifts the entire temple high above the surrounding landscape. In this design, the sanctum reaches 10 to 15 feet high, accessed only by a steep, narrow staircase. Overlaying an elephant's volume reveals the engineering logic. This structural barrier ensured the sanctum remained out of reach for temple elephants. The Paran coil effectively turned a place of worship into an unassailable fortress, where the deity was physically protected by the very height of the platform. This focus on massive platforms stands in sharp contrast to the northern Nagara style, which is defined by its curving, vertical white spires rather than elevated foundations. Further inland, the Vesara style emerged, blending different architectural traditions into dense, tiered carvings that cover every available inch of the stone exterior. While northern traditions often emphasize smaller, individual spaces for prayer, the Tamil blueprints evolved to support the massive requirements of community life. This community focus is best seen in the 1,000-pillar mandapams, where deep corridors of intricately carved stone columns were built to host thousands of people at once. These spaces are signaled from miles away by the multicolored pyramid gopurams, the towering gateways that have become the visual signature of the South. The Mani coil and the Perun coil reveal a deliberate architectural language, a system where ancient builders carved their poetry, their defense strategies, and their imperial ambitions directly into the stone landscape.